All right, and we are live.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for our Shawnee Chamber webinar series. Today, we are really very lucky and blessed to have Mike Montague with us to talk about selling yourself through social media. Mike is a public speaker and a corporate trainer here, and he is the head of global content and a certified trainer at Sandler Training Worldwide, where he teaches the behaviors, the attitudes, and techniques of interpersonal communication and needed to be more successful. So I think you will enjoy his humorous and real world approach to the difficult questions. And really, I think there's a lot of us now trying to figure out new ways to connect with people, since most of us are in our own home offices. So I think we'll have a lot of insight for us today. And Mike has spoken all over the world, really, and is known as Romeo. I did not know this about you. Mix 93.3, 105.1 Jack FM, and MC's live events. So we've had Mike speak with us in the past, and so I know that you will learn a lot and enjoy it. So with that, I will turn it over to you, Mike. Thank you so much for being here today.
Well, thanks, Ann, and welcome to all the attendees today. Like Ann said, I wrote a book on LinkedIn about 5 years ago, and I've presented at the Chamber a few times promoting that, and on and off whenever social selling came up. And you can get the book for free today. So first off, thanks, Dustin, for posting that in the chat. If you want to find the chat area, click on chat there, and you can find the link. It's sandler.com/LinkedIn Secrets. You can get a free PDF version of the book, which contains a lot of the tips today I'm going to share, but I wanted to switch around my normal presentation a little bit to talk more about what's going on in the world and how we can better use digital selling, social prospecting to build our business when we're working remotely here. So I think we should probably set things up here by talking about what exactly is social selling and why it's different. And I think the first thing that I think about is that it's not really much different from modern selling, maybe some things you were doing back in January before all this stuff broke loose. But there are more of it now, and we're required to do it now. Where I think, when I wrote the book 5 years ago, it was a nice to have. Social selling was something that you could do on your own, and you could I called it like the 3-point shot of selling. If you're trying to grow your business, it was a nice way to get bonus points. Now, I think 5 years later today, even back in January, it was a must-have or should have really, because you should be researching your prospects all the time on LinkedIn. You should be finding out more about people. You should be following the Chamber and all of their events and staying in touch with your network on social media. And then when the coronavirus hit, it became a must-have. Now it's something that you don't have any choice, really. You have to connect virtually. And so I think that's really where I hope everybody is today. And you're looking at this like fresh, whether you're a novice or you're a savvy social seller, and saying, hey, I need to take advantage of this to build my business, at least here during the summer and possibly quite longer. And I think really it should be a part of your prospecting and selling from here on out. So what is social selling? It's just using virtual tools, online networks to add more prospects, opportunities, and information to your pipeline. I think those three things are important. So think about that. When you're thinking about growing your business, whether you're a solopreneur, you work with a large company, or you're just out there in sales and business development, how can you add more people to your pipeline? How can you add more opportunities from those people? And how can you add more information about those opportunities when you're out there selling and moving around and shaking? So one of the cool things here at the bottom of the screen is you can add value to your network but with infinite resources, when you share your knowledge, your expertise, when you're a thought leader and you're connecting with other people and sharing your relationships, you don't lose those relationships. You don't lose that knowledge. In fact, it becomes stronger. So for me, I think leveraging social selling is extremely important because it allows us to use these infinite resources, our potential, our knowledge, our relationships, in exchange for things that are valuable for us, the people, opportunities, and information. So one more slide here, and then I want to ask you a question. Make sure you find the chat button on your control panel at the bottom there and pop open the chat. I'm going to ask you a question here at the end of the slide. The reason I think also you should be using social selling is that we found in industry studies across the globe that personal introductions close between 60 and 80% of the time for salespeople. Networking and referrals, meeting somebody at a chamber event, 35 to 50%. Inbound marketing leads, a lot of people think are the holy grail. They're only 10 to 30% conversion rates on those. And then cold calls, we can't do walk-ins right now, but just randomly calling or getting in touch with strangers, about 1 to 3% will convert to a sale, which is still not bad. If all else fails, you can make 100 cold calls today and make a sale. It's not the most efficient or pleasurable way to go about business, but it is doable. So I like to work this list from the top down and get as many personal introductions as I can, then do as much networking and referrals as I can, then any inbound leads, and then any cold calls I need in order to hit my goals and make the kind of money that I want to make from my business. So hopefully that makes sense to you, and you're thinking about how you can leverage social selling, LinkedIn, other networks to get personal introductions to people who need your product or service. The magic here in this graph is what we call qualification. When a third party, somebody independent from you, makes an introduction for you, they have said this person has a need and this person has a solution. That's why there's 60 to 80% chance of them doing business. When it's cold call, you don't know if that person has a problem and they don't know if you have a good solution. It's kind of a double blind situation there where it's only 1 to 3%. So my question for you is, how often are you doing social selling right? Based on that definition and those numbers that I was putting up there, how would you rank yourself? Type in the chat for me right now. On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being I've heard of LinkedIn, I know it exists, and 10 being I use it all the time, I pay for Sales Navigator, I'm crushing it and getting leads. Type in the chat for me really quick. 1 to 10, where would you rank your current social selling behavior? All right, I see 3, 5, 4, 4, 6, 3, 4. Thanks for chiming in, gang. We got an 8 in there. Thanks, Mike. 5, 7. Looks like we're on the bottom half. All right. Well, today I'm probably going to move pretty fast for most of you. Carol, Jenna, thanks for chiming in. 6 and 8 there. For those of you that are in the 7, 8 range, you're probably going to think we're going to start a little slow, but I promise I'll catch up and get some advanced tips and some ninja moves for you before we stop here. For those of you that are 6 and below, I'm going to really help you out here in the first 30 or the next 30 minutes or so. And then it might get a little too advanced for you, but pay attention. I'm not doing anything that is like requires programming or anything crazy skill level set, but you're going to hear a lot of stuff that you're not quite ready for towards the end. Just keep notes on that stuff and you can come back to it when you think it applies. So for me, doing it right, a 10 out of 10 would be finding the right person at the right time, hitting them with the right message through the right channel and with an appropriate ask for the amount of time and the level of our relationship, and getting them to take some sort of action that starts an interesting sales conversation. Now, I have another physical challenge for you here. So we got 5 minutes to pull this off. I want you to punch your numbers in the chat again, but this time I want you to Google yourself. Put your name into Google. And if you have I want you to count how many of the search results actually go to you. So if you look on this page, I'm Mike Montague. You can see that's my picture over here. That works. Mike Montague, Global Head of Content at Sandler. My LinkedIn profile comes up first. My personal website, Facebook profiles do not go to me. IMDb is not me. I was never a production manager on Son of a Gun. I do publish blogs on HubSpot, and I do help with Sandler franchising. So about 8 out of 10 would be my score. That'd be an 8 out of 10. Google yourself and type in the chat how many of those would go to you. If you have a really common name, you might need to put Shawnee or Kansas City after your name in order to get any of the results to come up. If you have a very unusual name, congratulations, that helps with your branding. But I wanted to show you a couple of things here that if people are looking for you, if you have an easy way for people to find you, if somebody was looking for me after this webinar, they heard that I was on with the Shawnee Chamber today and they typed in Mike Montague, what is the first thing that would come up? And it would be my LinkedIn profile. So making sure you set up your professional page and have something interesting here to say to people, I think is an important part of branding yourself and also part of social selling. It's kind of like building the foundation so that when people do find you, when you generate traffic and you generate leads and somebody looks at you, then obituary came up for John. John, I appreciate that that's not you. Congratulations on getting out of that listing. And 7 out of 10 is not bad, and we'll save the obituary for another day. That happens a lot of times, especially with common names or uncommon names when somebody else has passed away or a famous person. Those will come up a lot. But can people find you? Now, I'm going to give you another challenge. So yes, Jenna said there was a murder case from 2019. I think that you definitely want to be aware of those, and you want to build your social media profiles. A lot of time, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter will be the top results, and they include pictures, which is nice, so people know if they found you. But here's one more challenge. In another browser, go to linkedin.com/sales/SSI, or you can Google Social Selling Index, but you can see it right here on the top of my screen. Dustin can type that into the chat for you. LinkedIn.com/sales/SSI, and log into LinkedIn, and they'll give you a free score of how they think you're using LinkedIn. So you can see mine here. I have an 81. It's in the top 1% of my industry and the top 2% of the people I'm connected to. I'm really good at establishing my professional brand, really good at building relationships, but I don't do as much searching, and I don't do as much engaging with people. Mostly I'm not in sales anymore. But what I think a lot of the time you'll find out is these are very similar to the scores that you gave yourself, but it also gives you some things to work on. So if you click on these links here, it will give you some tips on how you raise that score and some important things that you can do to establish your personal brand. So you can bookmark this, save it, come back to it, linkedin.com/sales/SSI, and work on improving your score as we leave for today. Good numbers for each circle are in, I would say, like the 15 to 20 range. If you're above 20, then you're really doing well. You see that 81, I haven't really seen anybody with a perfect score. I think the highest I've seen is like 87. So 81 puts me in the top 1 to 2%. I think if you're in the top 10 to 15%, that's probably doing a really good job. If you're in the 60s to 80s, you're doing a good job. I appreciate you sharing and playing along, Colby and John. Thanks for that. Shali as well. I appreciate you guys doing that activity. Now I'm going to show you some other tips, but that's a good way to keep track of how you're doing. First, I want to talk about the overall strategy. So when we're thinking about what we're trying to accomplish, I like to think about the analogy we use here at Sandler of the referral tree. If your network was a tree and you have strong branches and you have some weak branches, you have some dead branches you haven't taken care of, Shelly, there you go. And you have some branches that you haven't watered in years, they're dead. how would you rate the health of your referral tree? Obviously, the Shawnee Chamber is a branch that you can use. And how healthy is that branch? Are you attending events? Are you paying attention? Are you meeting new people? Are you watering it? Are you giving it food, time, and attention, getting it out in the sun? Or have you neglected that branch for a while? What we found is that each of these branches lead us to other branches and they spur out two different people. So if we have a really great client, our great client can introduce us to 2 to 20 more branches or people that we can do business with. So how often do you take care of it, feed, nurture your network, and how often do you ask for introductions to create new branches? Have you ever trimmed and gotten rid of people there? Now, I'm jumping into some of my sales tips. So that was attitude. This is a behavior. One of the great ways to find new people is to search for people who are already looking to buy your product or service. The easiest way to do that, and I'm going to be using mostly LinkedIn today, Facebook and Twitter and other things also have great search bars that you can search for posts and people. But I searched for the Shawnee Chamber. That's a great one. If you haven't followed that page yet, we can just type in Shawnee Chamber. And you can see the people that have worked there or have added Shawnee Chamber, but you can also follow the Shawnee Chamber of Commerce on their page. It looks like this. So you'll know you're getting to the right place here, and you can click the follow button on the right. There's also some settings that you can share that page with other people or unfollow if you chose to do that, but you would make Dustin cry. So click the follow button, give them some love, and pay attention to the events, like and share posts that they're doing. The same thing will work for your products and your prospects and your clients. So I think it's extremely important to keep track of your clients and like and share stuff that they're doing. So I work with Sandler trainers from around the world to help them build their business, deliver interesting content like podcasts, blogs, and white papers and videos. So I liked Sophia's video here. I've also recently commented on some other video posts that like Nima Semnani made, and he's in Pittsburgh. He posted a video, so I made a comment here showing him some love. And that's how we're building relationships with people in social media, is by liking and sharing their stuff. The way I think about it is there are people all around the world dying for people to pay attention to them and to listen to them and like them. You can either be shouting and trying to share more in the noise and also be liked and shared, or you can be the person who's doling out those likes and those shares. You can be the one listening when other people are trying to talk and get attention. I think listening is a lot more powerful. Now, the other thing you can do is advanced search for people. So when we're searching for people, there's some cool things that we can do. And at Sandler, we sell to like vice presidents of sales, sales managers, and owners who are looking to improve their sales team. So I could put VP of sales here in the search bar, and then I can go to these all filters, and let me go back real quick and show you. By putting VP of sales, there were 3.2 million results of VPs of sales that I could be calling on as prospects for me. I don't know about you, but that list is pretty large for me to follow up on. So I'm not going to make 3.2 million cold calls, so I need to narrow that list down a little bit. I live here in Kansas City. I'm in Lenexa. I have lived in Shawnee for 5 years myself as well, out there in West Shawnee. But I probably want first connections are people that I know. So I want second degree connections, people I don't know that are in the United States, or I'm going to put Kansas City Metro here. Kansas City, Missouri area. And let's just say I only speak English, although I've been working on my Spanish here during the quarantine on the weekends. And I like to sell to people in information technology and marketing and advertising industries, because I've worked in both. If I click apply, That 3.2 million came down to 1,600 results that I could pursue. Now that's actually not a bad manageable list. If I pursued this list over the course of a year, that might be a decent number. But I could also take one of those industries out and get down to a much better list. So if I just said IT, now I'm down to 741. That's definitely a workable list for me for the year. Typically, a good number, you might want to write this down, is 8 to 10 times the number of sales you need to make. So you can, do that by a monthly or annual basis. But if you think about 10 times the number of sales that you need to make in a year, what would that be? For me, about 10 to 12 good new clients would be a really good business for me. Typically, we work with teams, and it takes a lot of effort to work with them. So 12 new clients would be great. 120 people on my list, or 1,020 total to work, would be a really good number for me to shoot for. And then what I can do from here is look at these people, and these are all second degree connections, which means somebody that I know also knows these people. You can see Lee here is connected to Kevin. I've worked with Lee and done business with him. Kevin Farrell is connected to Annie, and I've done lots of business with Kevin, helped him out and done speaking engagements. Could come down to some of these other people and find out who we're connected to. But you can see I have a lot of connections. 39 other people are connected to Christine. I probably have somebody that could introduce me, and I can get that gold of a personal introduction to somebody who needs my product or services. So the easiest way to do that is to call up Chris Larson and say, hey, Chris, how well do you know Christine Hansen? Do you think she needs Sandler training at all? And would it be a good introduction for me? If so, do you know her well enough to make that introduction? And that's a great way to get the ball rolling. Any questions on that? Type in the questions or in the chat. Is that something that you could do to build your business? Search for suspects on LinkedIn, look for companies, look for people, look for organizations that you can add, and start trying to have interesting conversations with them by liking, sharing, and commenting on their posts. You can also reach out and connect. I'm going to talk about that here in a minute. Does it sound doable? Somebody give me a yes or no. Carol asked, how do we know that they're legitimate? What do you mean by legitimate? Like a qualified prospect? All right, good. There's some things, that's a great question, Carol. So I will do a few things. If I clicked on Christine's profile here, I would do a few things. Depends on what you're selling, but I always look for mutual connections and ask them to help me qualify the list to see if they're a legitimate person. Say, hey, Chris, Mike Springer, PE, and a whole bunch of other people. Does she have a sales team? Is she somebody that I would want to do business with? Is this somebody that pays their bills and is likable? Ask them all those questions. I'll also go through and check out and find out more about their company. So if I scroll down here and say, she's vice president of sales at Avtex, I've never heard of that before. Let me go check it out. They have 450 employees. That's a lot. So that might help me qualify the list. I can also look at recently posted stuff here from the company or from her. So if I go down to activity, I can see all the things that she has shared and posted recently. So a lot of times you can share posts, search and post too, and say, I would do like hiring salespeople, or if you're a plumber, you can say, you can type in flooded basement and see if anybody's mentioned flooded basement on Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn. That helps me qualify that list a little bit. And I hope that helps you answer that question, because that's where I was going. When I'm listening for opportunities, I like to pay attention to what they're talking about, what they're mentioning, but also other trigger events. So if you sell houses, for example, job changes, baby announcements, job losses, changing cities, all those things are great trigger events for people needing to buy or sell a house. Marriages and divorces are always a good thing to track there, and in real estate. But if you're working with companies, maybe product launches, competitors coming into the market, other types of market changes. Obviously, there's lots of change and disruption in the news right now. Understanding how your clients and prospects deal with that is an important part of listening to them and paying attention to those opportunities. Again, I think one of the number one challenges salespeople have is that they are kind of narrow in their vision. They're only looking at the people they already know and already have doing business with, and they're not looking on social media listening. They're trying to post something about how great their product or service is and then hope somebody calls them. What I want you to do is reverse that. Look at your client base, see what they're talking about and how they would give you a reason to reach out to them proactively. So if I saw Christine there post that they were hiring a salesperson, I could reach out to her and say, hey, Christine, and we're going to talk about that here in a second too. Let me jump up here. I might say, I'm going to roll that back. I might just reach out to her and say, hey, I saw you're hiring a salesperson. I work with salespeople and help companies hire and retain the best salespeople. I don't know if it's something you need help with. Maybe you got it handled. But if it's interesting to you, would you mind connecting on LinkedIn and having a 15-minute conversation? See if there's anything here. That's a reasonable ask for a cold outreach. So we are moving quite along, but I wanted to talk about sharing here because this is our next best practices. We can push stuff out there and hope that people click it, but there's some ways to do this in a way that's being a giver to our network and not a taker. So I would say you want to share a lot more than you think, probably about 3 to 9 times more than you think. But most of those posts are going to be other people's stuff. You're going to be curating articles from the Shawnee Chamber and stuff that they're posting. You're going to be liking your clients and your vendors' stuff and sharing their stuff. And about 3 times a day, you might write your own post, stuff that you have going on, giving or creating a helpful video for your clients or prospects. And then 1 time out of 9, you might share something that's a marketing call to action, like sign up for this webinar, download this white paper, contact me if you need my product or service. What that looks like, Shelly asked, about 9 times, 3 to 9 actions a day. 3 posts that are yours, morning, noon, and night, and 9 actions total. So it would look like this. About 5 curated items. 5 times you'll go out and you'll comment or share somebody else's stuff. 2 times a day, you'll do a professional or a personal post about stuff that you have going on. Some sort of content marketing that you're giving to other people, or a newsworthy personal event, something that's happening in your life. So I posted about, doing this webinar today and stuff. And then 1 time a day, and varying that during the time of day, is some sort of promotional marketing call to action. Shelly, you also asked, does this vary with social media platforms? Not really. Most of them are, some of them are harder to produce content on. So something like YouTube, you probably wouldn't do post 3 videos a day. That would be a lot. But for most social platforms like LinkedIn, Facebook, or Twitter, yes, those streams move so fast that if you're not taking a bunch of actions, if you're only posting once a day or sharing 1 thing a day, nobody's seeing that. The feed is moving so fast that unless it really goes viral and is really powerful, nobody's seeing that. You'll see maybe 10 to 100 people that even view it. And with a lot more activity, you'll see a lot more people that check media at different times of the day. That helps us share that stuff out. Any questions on sharing? Type those in the chat because I'm going to move along. We've already talked a lot about engaging with suspects, but liking and sharing and commenting on other people's posts are a great way to start interesting conversations. Also, in your post, putting questions in there or asking other people questions is a great way to start a conversation. A lot of times, social media conversations die out because you post something, somebody else hits like, and then you ignore it and no conversation ever starts from it. But Imagine in real world, you're at a Shawnee Chamber event back in January, and somebody comes up and says, "Hey, Amy, I really like your shirt." And you just turn and walk away and don't say anything. That would be a little awkward, right? And it wouldn't start an interesting conversation. But if somebody likes or shares your information and they think it's valuable, a great way to interact with them is just to say, "Hey, thanks for liking that. Just out of curiosity, what'd you like about it? Have you ever used my product or service before? Or what did you think was interesting there?" I think another thing is when you join the Shawnee Chamber or any other private LinkedIn groups, Facebook groups, things like that, is watch when people are new to the group and welcome new members. It's a really easy low-hanging fruit to just say, "Hey, Daniel, I saw that you just joined the group. If there's anything I can do to help or anybody I can introduce you to, happy to do that. Just out of curiosity, what made you join the chamber at this time?" Really easy way to start a conversation. And Daniel asked here, are LinkedIn groups or Facebook groups a good avenue to share and post? I would say yes. Some of them are better than others. You'll find really active groups. You'll find groups that are not active, but in general, if you're proactive in using them, most of them are. If you just join a group and then never do anything with it, not so much. So that's why engaging with people is the best tactic here. And I got the job of reading all the names today, which is not fun. So rather than try and guess there, I'm just going to read the question: which is the best time of day to post? And morning, noon, and night. People check before work, at lunch, and after work. So I say like 8, noon, and 4 are really good times. You can also go a little bit earlier than that if you wanted, but generally, when we were working 8 to 5, those were the best times of day. That may have shifted. We've seen a lot of things shift later in the day now that people are working from home. So right now it might be 10, 2, and 6 might be the most times to engage. But if you just practice and share some stuff, you'll start seeing what hits. Tagging other people in your posts helps get a lot of traction and helps other people see it that wouldn't have seen it. So anytime you get a chance to say, "Hey, Carol, I thought you might find this interesting," and tag Carol in the post, all of Carol's followers will also see that post, and that'll help spread the word a lot. If you can do that with groups and tag about 5 to 10 people, that will really get something going out there. But don't do that with your marketing posts, because that's just spamming and using other people's audiences to steal their attention. So take your time on those. Amy says, do you recommend going all in at once with posts and activity or easing into it? I would definitely say ease into it. I'm going to share with you a lot of tips and tricks today, so you don't have to feel like you have to do all of them all of the time. Find what's comfortable for you, what's an appropriate cadence. If you sell something like a house that people do once in a lifetime or at minimum once every few years, you probably don't need to be reaching out to people every single day because their housing needs haven't changed every day. But if you sell something like at Sandler, we work with Uber Eats, and people are eating 3 times a day, they probably need to be doing a lot of posting to keep fresh stuff in front of people every time mealtime comes around, right? So think about your business and your audience, how often they need to hear from you is a great tip. Now, I think we are perfectly on time, but this next tip is my absolute #1 tip. Best thing that you can do to get more business out of LinkedIn or social networking. I have never had this not work if you do it consistently. So ask for introductions. What I want you to do is think about people you're already meeting with or you already have a networking relationship with. Maybe it's somebody at the chamber that you are going to do a virtual coffee with, or a client that's a great client and you want to get a referral from. Look up their connections ahead of time on LinkedIn, Facebook, or Twitter, and find out who would be a good suspect for you. Then ask if they feel comfortable introducing you. So I'm going to show you real quick. We can search connections of other people's connections. So if I go to somebody in my network, I'm just going to pick my dad. He is a trainer here in Kansas City. And I go to his connections. I can search his connections for the VPs of sales that I was looking for. And when I do that, I see that there are 259 people. So I could also filter down, this list if I wanted to and stuff, and make sure that they were in Kansas City. But basically what I would do is if I was going to meet with Steve or have a conversation with him later today, I would go through and pick out 10 names of people that I thought might be good introductions for me. And I can encourage him to do the same. And then when we get to the meeting, I will use this script. So I'll write down 10 names. I might take some people off here, give them a quick cursory glance, see if any of these people are interesting. Then I'm going to go back to my script. I'm going to say, hey, Steve, I went on LinkedIn, like we discussed. I found some people that I thought might be good prospects for me. Hopefully you did the same. I need your help qualifying this list. Can you scratch out any of these 10 names that you think would not be a good fit for any reason? If you don't know them, if they're jerks, if they don't need what I have, just scratch out the names. And then if there's anybody left on the list, put a star by the one you think could really use my help. And then we can talk about how to make an introduction. Do you think that would work for you? Personally, I have never gone 0 for 10 when I've done that. There's always been at least one name that person goes, oh man, you know what? I didn't think about so-and-so. I didn't think about Christine. She would be a great introduction for you. Let's talk it out. Now, there are other times where they might go, most of these are no's. I kind of know this person, but I don't think I'd be the best person to answer that for you. And they will, they'll kind of help you get in there. But you can take a screenshot of this really quick, or it's really simple. Just ask for them to disqualify people. A lot of times when we ask, for introductions, we say, hey, do you have any referrals for me, right? Like that comes up in B&I groups all the time, right? Hey, who'd be great introduction? Got any referrals for me? Can you pass any names my way? Well, what that sounds like is, who do you know that would pay me money? And that's a really difficult ask. People don't know who your ideal clients are, so they can't think of names. You know what you're looking for. You have the scavenger hunt list. It's a lot easier for you to find the names and then for them to say yes or no on whether they feel comfortable introducing you. So think about it that way. Again, it's flipping the script. Rather than what can you post on social media, think about what you can listen to. Instead of who can give me referrals, think about who can I ask for referrals and introductions from. It really makes a dramatic difference in the way that you do social selling. John, I saw that I missed your question there about will it turn people off if you send out too much stuff? Generally not on social media. There are filters in place that will start hiding stuff, and people generally ignore all the junk that's out there in the stream. That's why we have to be a little bit careful, but don't tag people too often, or don't directly send them emails or direct messages on social media too much. That will annoy people because we all get notifications and sometimes too much in there. One last tip I wanted to give you about reaching out to people is sometimes you can't get an introduction and you need to reach out cold and send an email or a direct message to people. And so this is why I just gave that warning, John, about don't do this over and over again all the time, and don't follow up. We want you to follow up, but not to the point of being completely annoying and rude, especially during this crisis when people have other things going on, or they might just not be getting your messages. But a couple of quick tips here. Number one, use short subject lines. Whenever you try to oversell and you use a fancy marketing subject line, that just goes into spam, or people see it as spam and they delete it. They don't even open it. So human beings are lazy. They use one-word subject lines like introduction, question, or help. Those are 3 great one-word subject lines. Think about if you got an email from a person that you know and it says introduction, you're going to click on it. If it says question, you're going to say, hey, what's the question? You're going to open it and read it. Then in the body of the email, we want 3 to 5 sentences total. Be super short. Don't try and oversell, but try to be professional here and think about why are you reaching out? Give a quick introduction and purpose about why you sent them a message. Number 2, what is the problem that you solve for them? What's in it for them by paying attention to what you do for a living? So not how you sell, not all the great stuff that your product or service does, but what's something that they might be seeing in their life or struggling with that you can take off their plate. Then in one sentence, how you can remove that problem better or differently than everybody else, and follow it up with a tiny ask that's appropriate for your level of relationship. So if you're best friends, if you've known each other for your whole lives, you can say, hey, let's get together over dinner and talk about it. If you're a complete stranger, the ask needs to be super tiny, like just reply to this message and tell me yes or no. It's okay if it's a no, I'll take you off my list. But I wanted to make sure that I reach out to you and I told you that I have a solution to a problem that I think you have. At Sandler, we've been talking about a really cool thing called ethical selling, especially during this crisis and pandemic. It's unethical and not right to go out trying to sell people things they don't need during a crisis, right? But it's also unethical to not sell something that people desperately need right now. Holding something back that could help them and make their lives easier, make them more money, save them money, is unethical not to sell them and not to try to reach out to people that you can help. So obviously, if we had a vaccine for the virus, holding that and keeping that quiet is completely unethical right now in this time period. Well, same thing may be true for your product or service. If you make somebody's lives easier, if you solve problems, remove stress for them, save them money, make them money, do your job of pursuing it and making sure that you follow up and that they know that a solution exists, but don't oversell it. If it's not something they need, if it doesn't solve a problem, no is okay. We'll take the no and we'll move on to somebody else that might need our problem. So here's a sample email real quick. It'd be something like, hey, Janelle, I'm reaching out to you because I noticed on LinkedIn that you're hiring a salesperson right now. I work with business owners who have trouble retaining salespeople, are growing fast and need to hire a lot of salespeople, or who have just never hired salespeople before and they're not really sure how to tell if they're getting somebody who actually will sell. I fixed this problem for thousands of business owners by doing some online behavioral profiling and third-party interviewing that make sure you get the right person. If this is interesting to you, just send me back a yes in the chat and we can set up a quick Zoom call to talk it out. If not, let me know that as well and I'll take you off my list. I think that's a really appropriate question for somebody that is looking to solve a problem that you can help them solve. Now, following up is a little bit tricky and we're starting to run a little bit short on time, but again, this is something that most salespeople struggle on. It takes about 6 attempts to make a sale and get an appointment, up to 80% accuracy. But most salespeople try 1.5 times. So it takes 7 to 8 touches to make a sale, and most salespeople try 1.5 times. What does that tell you? Most salespeople give up way too early. Also, they kind of tend to beat down the same medium over and over again. So if you're sending all these messages over LinkedIn and you're not getting a reply, maybe try a text message, or maybe try Facebook or Twitter, or try picking up the phone and you might get a response. So alternate your modes of communication, spread those attempts out over 2 weeks. So it's kind of every 48 hours or so is an appropriate amount of time for wait for a response. Might be a little bit longer. Those numbers are pre-coronavirus. So in this time, I might wait and maybe do twice a week and take those attempts, those 6 attempts over 3 weeks, just to spread things out and give people a chance to respond. A couple of other quick tips is increase the amount of information you give in each message. Don't oversell on the first message. And then if you call within 5 minutes of seeing them post on social media, that generally means they're at their computer or they have their phone in their hand. And so they're not doing anything. If you call right away, you have a 10 to 100 times greater chance of getting a hold of them if you just saw them post on social media. So that's another great thing to listen to when you're out there on social media looking at your prospects and clients. Here's an example of a progression. We don't have time to do all of these, but I'd start with a really simple message. It could be a direct message or a voicemail that just says something like, hey, Victoria, it's Mike with Sandler. Give me a call back when you get a chance. Here's my number. Then I add stuff to that. If I don't get a call back, my next message might be a text or it might be a direct message that says, hey, it's Mike Montague at Sandler. I was reaching out to you because blank. It's important but not urgent that we speak is a great line. That tells them that, their kid's not in trouble, they're not fired or anything, but it's important that we get together and I get an answer from you of whether I can help you or not. So important but not urgent that we speak. When I get down to 5 or 6, I'm doing a strong, what we call a takeaway. I'm going negative again. And I'm saying something like, hey, PJ, at this point, I'm going to assume that you're not interested and I'm going to take you off my call list. Obviously, I let you know that I help build sales teams, help salespeople be more effective, help business owners hire salespeople. If anything like that comes up in your future you think I can help you with, you contact me. I'm not going to reach out to you anymore, but sorry for bothering you. Hope everything's going well for you. And I'm just going to do what we call a close the file call there. I'm going to close it off and say, hey, that's not it. Sounds like it's not interested, and do a takeaway. If they are, they'll reach in. If they're not interested, they'll let us close the file there. So I'm down to my last slide. We'll see if we hit any other best practices. Now is your time to type the questions in the question panel for our final Q&A. Janelle asked me to hit the LinkedIn SSI again. I'll try and do that. If you have any other questions, use the chat box or the Q&A right now and I'll take a look. But here are my top 10 tips. These are for the advanced people and for beginners. You don't have to do all 10, but as many of these as you can fit in, you will not be disappointed, I promise. Search those connections of your contacts before every meeting and ask for referrals. If you do this consistently, you only have to fill your calendar one time, and then you can set an appointment from every meeting on your calendar, and so you never have to cold call again. This is called the yellow brick road approach. I talked with one of the people that I've trained yesterday. He has 24 scheduled appointments in the next 2 weeks, all from doing this introduction tactic and using LinkedIn. So all he's doing is reaching out and saying, hey, are these people that you know? If you do, great, let's make an introduction and we'll set up a Zoom call. If not, we'll do the next one. 2 appointments a day is a really good goal to set. He was a little bit over with 24. Create your saved list. When you search for prospects in LinkedIn there, you can actually save that list. So when I do this search, over here on the right, there's a button that says Save Searches. I can create a search alert so that I don't have to run this filter every single time over and over again. So when you get a good targeted list, you can also make lists of people on Facebook or Twitter. Save your prospecting list so you can keep paying attention to those same people over and over again. Start online conversations from your likes, shares, and comments. We've talked about that a lot. Send cold emails or InMails if you can't get an introduction. Don't be afraid to pick up the telephone. A lot of people today, especially during the coronavirus, have stopped using the telephone. If you're in business development or you're trying to grow your small business, pick up the phone and talk to people. They will take your calls more now than ever, is what we've been finding across the nation in the last 6 weeks or so. Take action on trigger events. When you see job changes, you see people post about things that you can help with, follow up those with immediate action and do your 6-step progression plan to make sure that you get a yes or no answer. So in professional sales, we don't stop from a no answer or being ghosted. We stop when we hear a yes or a no. Up to 6 tries. After that, you're stalking a little bit. Research leads and suspects ahead of time. You can also schedule your posts. So when I was talking about those 3 posts a day that you should be creating, you can use tools like Buffer, Edgar, or Hootsuite to schedule those out ahead of time so you don't have to actually go on LinkedIn 3 times that day. I would recommend at least monthly writing a regular article or creating some sort of video that's original content, some sort of thought leadership that you're doing and showing that you're a professional in your industry. That's kind of a pro level advanced tip, but it is definitely great for growing your reputation. You might even get a speaking gig like this at the chamber if you post something really thought-provoking for everybody. Expand your prospecting list with the people also viewed and similar companies list. I didn't show that one, so that'll be my 10th one. But if you're on somebody's profile that is a good client for you or a good prospect, over here on the right-hand side is people also viewed. So there's 10 other people that LinkedIn thinks is similar to this person you're looking at. And the same thing happens on a company's page. So if I just clicked on the University of Kansas, you'll see over here on the side, there's also the University at Buffalo and the Darla Moore School that might also be prospects for me. So the same thing works with companies. You can kind of just balloon out and work out from your ideal prospects into finding new people that you haven't heard of before. All right, final thoughts here are 4 tips, again, back to the attitude, what you should be doing, especially in this time of crisis, but really from here on out. I think social selling is just the way that selling will be from now on, and it'll always be a part of what we do. Build social capital by giving, by creating that thought leadership, by listening and sharing other people's stuff. Build your relationships by staying connected, especially right now in this crisis, and keeping in touch with people at the chamber, watering your referral tree, and keeping in touch with your clients and prospects. My favorite joke that I like to give here is, how often should you tell your spouse that you love them? How often should you tell your spouse that you love them? It also works for clients. How often should you show your appreciation for clients? The answer is before somebody else does. All right. Hopefully that gave you a laugh. So pay attention to those relationships, water those referral trees, build your authority and your networking prowess by adding value to your network. Give to the chamber, volunteer for events, give to the community, give to other people in your network, and do that thought leadership. Create interesting, thought-provoking content and thoughtful shares or interesting questions that will build your authority in. And start small. Start with your clients, start with Kansas City, and then work your way out from there. Build intimacy by opening up and being personal. That is huge on social media because it's a perfect chance, especially now when we're working from home, to see people's pets and spouses and kids come into the calls. It's a great time to have a real conversation with people. I've even found just the question, how are you? Has gone from a throwaway question in sales to something you actually want to hear the answer to. So don't be afraid to share how you're actually doing and listen to how other people are actually doing in this time period. Now's the time for the Q&A. Everything you ever wanted to know about LinkedIn or social selling, type that in the chat right now. I'm going to hit these questions fast and hard. And then if you want a free copy of my book, LinkedIn Secrets, there are a bunch of tips for how you can use LinkedIn, and they're evergreen. They work all the time before and after. Go to sandler.com/LinkedIn Secrets, and I'll have Dustin share that one more time in the chat. Here are the questions. LinkedIn Sales SSI again. If you go to the Social Selling Index, that's a measurement of how active and how well you're using LinkedIn. So LinkedIn measures 4 things, and you can dive in more information on that page about what they're measuring. But it's basically, do you have your profile filled out? Are you looking great? Are you sharing interesting stuff? Are you engaging with other people's stuff? And are you searching for prospects? The tips that I've been giving today, I actually worked with LinkedIn on. We co-wrote the book. A guy named Coca Sexton worked at LinkedIn at the time, and he and I co-wrote this book on LinkedIn, the Sandler Way. And they give it away still on LinkedIn.com. So check out those tips, and you can find more there at that website. Janelle. Carol said, some people do a lot of videos on Facebook. I don't want to watch the whole thing to find out what they're saying. I'd rather scan. Am I a fast reader, or are there any limits to Facebook Live posts? I agree with you, Carol. When I post stuff, I try to do both. So I'll pre-record the video rather than do it live, or I'll type in the takeaways in the chat afterwards. I think that also works on LinkedIn and Twitter. It's just personal preference. So we find a lot of times that some people prefer video. They're doing other things. Some people like podcasts because you can work out or go for a walk, clean the house, and listen to a podcast. And you don't have to watch or read. Other people are faster readers, so I can read faster than people can talk. If you're a speed reader, you could have finished the whole book by now. All right, other questions here. Is there something you shouldn't put in your profile? That's a great question. I would say don't put that you're looking for a job unless you're looking for a job. Sometimes we fill out LinkedIn like a resume and we're talking about ourselves and our credentials and stuff like we're trying to get hired. And I'm a hardworking professional salesperson. Well, my clients don't care about that. So I want to make it client facing and client focused there. So that's a great question. Other than that, I would say you're not going to want to share anything offensive or stuff that your audience wouldn't appreciate, but you can be personal. You can share your personal life and your stuff. I have a cousin that lives in Minnesota now. She is hysterical on social media. If you follow her Instagram, her name is Meg Lewis, but she is from Blue Springs, and she just posts funny things about her toilet habits, about her work, about shows she's watching, all kinds of great, funny, interesting thoughts. But she has a massive following of people because it's so entertaining and she's doing it in the right way. Shelly also asked, I get a ton of questions or requests on LinkedIn. Should I accept them all or not? I think it is definitely a not. So you can always reply to those with a message and say, hey, thanks for reaching out. How did you think we could be of help to each other? Most of the time people won't respond and then I ignore them. So I am answering another question while I'm doing this. So sorry about the screens. I'm trying to go back to my script. This one is the cold email script. But to finish that thought there, Shelly, I would just reject anybody you don't know, or I would ask them and try to start the conversation. Is there a reason why you're reaching out? How did you think that I could help? Because I think a lot of times there's way too much stuff going on there. Also, I hate to say it this way, but females tend to get a lot more creepers. So if that's the case, definitely reject all those, but everybody gets plenty of insurance salesmen. So sorry, no offense meant on either one of those, but I feel like those are just facts at this point. So reject those and do business and connect with people that you want to do business with and connect with. Karen, I have 3 businesses similarly related. Is it okay to have it all on one page? Yes, if they're similarly related, it's much better to concentrate your efforts on one thing rather than spread out your audience and try and get people to follow 3 things. You have to be a really good marketer or know a heck of a lot of people to build 3 separate audiences. So most of the time I recommend people just funnel it all into one. I think that is just about it. Anne, how'd we do? Any questions that I missed or Dustin, anything that we missed as we want to wrap up?
I thought that was great. I took a lot of notes and was looking at my LinkedIn profile while you were talking. So I've got some work to do, but this has been really, really great. And I actually, several of the questions I had kind of were popping up here. So I was writing and deleting. But yeah, that oversharing, or if things get filtered out, if you post too much, that was something that I had always wondered if that was.
Yeah, again, I think there's, it's just a fine line. There's a balance in everything, right? But most salespeople are actually too timid, and most marketers don't post enough because we're afraid of being pushy and annoying. And if you're doing it with the right intention, if you're not a pushy, annoying salesperson or an interruptive, annoying marketer that's saying, hey, buy from me 9 times a day, then it's okay. You're not doing too much. So if they're thoughtful, intelligent posts, then you can't do that enough.
Good. Yeah.
Appreciate it. Well, thanks for having me. It's great to do an event here in Kansas City. Like you said earlier, I've do these around the world now. If you want to follow the podcast, it's How to Succeed podcast. Has had over 1 million downloads, and I post an episode a week. And certainly if there's anything I can do to help out people locally, I love that, since I work with millions of salespeople all around the world now. It's fun to do one here from home, even if we couldn't do it in person today. So
Exactly.
thanks for the ask.
Exactly. Well, appreciate it. And to those on the call, we will post this on our website. So if you want to go back and look at some of this information again or listen again, you'll have that opportunity, and we will send that out to, I know I had several people email me later in the day that had planned to make it, and just life had other plans for them. So anyway, thank you all. Be safe, and look forward to joining you all again soon.